Admiral Zektar stood before the massive holographic display in the command center of the Hegemony flagship times Dominion's Edge asterisk. The three-dimensional map showed the Outer Rim territories, where small red dots marked human colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. Each dot represented what the Galactic Council considered a minor irritation at best. These primitives have been in space for less than 2 centuries, Zektar announced to his assembled fleet commanders. His 4 arms gestured dismissively at the display. Their technology is crude, their ships are slow, and their weapons are laughably outdated. The Council has decided they've expanded far enough. Captain Mordoun, whose species had been conquering worlds for over 10,000 years, leaned forward in his biomechanical chair. Admiral, our intelligence reports suggest the humans have been unusually quiet lately. No new colony ships, no expansion fleets. Should we be concerned? Zektar's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his kind. Quiet. They're probably cowering in their little metal cans, hoping we'll overlook them. The Terran Federation has maybe 300 ships total. We have over 2,000 in this fleet alone. The holographic display zoomed in on a cluster of human colonies near the edge of known space. New Geneva, Armstrong Station, and Hope's End. 3 systems that represented humanity's furthest reach into the galaxy. Intelligence reports indicated each system had modest defensive fleets and civilian populations in the millions. The plan is simple, Zektar continued. We'll demonstrate the Council's power by removing these outer colonies. Once the humans see their frontier settlements burning, they'll retreat to their home system and beg for mercy. The Council will allow them to keep Earth and perhaps 1 or 2 other worlds, under strict supervision, of course. The assembled commanders nodded approval. This had been the standard procedure for dealing with upstart species for millennia. Show overwhelming force, destroy a few key targets, and watch the primitives surrender. The Galactic Council had perfected this approach across hundreds of conquered civilizations. Sir, interrupted Communications Officer Veltar, we're receiving a transmission from the human colony at New Geneva. They're requesting to speak with our fleet commander. We have, Zektar's eyes brightened with anticipation. Already? We haven't even entered their space yet. Put them through. The main display shifted to show a middle-aged human female in a simple military uniform. Her rank insignia identified her as Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding officer of New Geneva Defense Force. She appeared calm, almost serene, as she looked directly into the camera. I am Colonel Chen, speaking on behalf of the New Geneva colony and the Terran Federation. We are aware of your fleet's approach and your intentions. I have a simple message for Admiral Zektar. The alien admiral stepped forward, his massive form casting shadows across the command deck. I am Admiral Zektar, of the Hegemony 3rd Fleet. You will surrender your colonies immediately and prepare for relocation to designated reservation worlds. Compliance will be rewarded with minimal casualties. Colonel Chen smiled, an expression that somehow made several alien officers uncomfortable, though they couldn't explain why. Admiral, I want you to understand something very important. You are about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. The Terran Federation is giving you one chance to turn your ships around and leave our space. This is your only warning. The command deck erupted in clicking, growling, and various other sounds of alien amusement. A human colony of maybe 5 million civilians was threatening a fleet that could glass entire planets. Human, Zektar said, his voice dripping with condescension. You have 12 hours to begin evacuation procedures. After that, we will demonstrate why the Galactic Council's word is law. Admiral, Colonel Chen replied, her smile never wavering. You have 30 minutes to begin your retreat. After that, you'll discover why humanity has been so quiet lately. The transmission ended, leaving the command deck in stunned silence. Then the laughter began. Officers from a dozen different species found the humans' audacity hilarious. Some were already composing reports about the amusing defiance they'd witnessed before the inevitable slaughter. Sir, reported the sensor officer, I'm detecting movement in the New Geneva system. It appears to be civilian traffic, cargo ships, personal vessels. They seem to be evacuating as ordered. Excellent, Zektar said. At least some humans have sense. Helm. Set course for New Geneva. Standard formation. Let's end this foolishness. The hegemony fleet began its final approach to the human system. 2,000 warships arranged in perfect battle formation. Their weapons powered and shields at full strength. It was a magnificent display of galactic might. The kind that had brought countless species to their knees. As they crossed into human space, the fleet's sensors began picking up the evacuation traffic Colonel Chen had mentioned. Hundreds of small ships were indeed fleeing the colony worlds. Their drives pushed to maximum as they scattered in all directions. Pathetic, muttered Captain Mordoon. They can't even organize a proper evacuation. Look at them, running like scared insects. But something was bothering the fleet's intelligence officer. A methodical being named Kelnath, whose species specialized in pattern recognition. Admiral, something is wrong with this evacuation. Wrong how? Zektar demanded. The ships, sir. I've been analyzing their movement patterns and energy signatures. These aren't civilian vessels. The power readings are all wrong, and their formation isn't random at all. They're moving in a specific pattern. Before Zektar could respond, alarms began wailing throughout the command ship. The sensor operator's voice cracked with disbelief. Sir, I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. The evacuation ships. They're not evacuating. They're taking positions. The main display shifted to tactical view, and suddenly everything became clear. What had appeared to be panicked civilian traffic was actually a carefully orchestrated deployment of military vessels. The cargo ships were shedding false hulls to reveal sleek warships underneath. The personal vessels were expanding into configurations no one in the Galactic Council had ever seen. How many ships? Zektar whispered. The sensor officer's voice was barely audible. Approximately 8,000, sir. And still climbing as more false hulls are being discarded. Captain Mordoon stood so quickly his chair toppled backward. That's impossible. Intelligence reported 300 human ships total. Intelligence was wrong, came a new voice from the communication system. Colonel Chen appeared on the display again. But now she was standing in what was clearly a military command center. Surrounded by officers and tactical displays, you're looking at just the New Geneva Defense Fleet. Would you like to see what we've prepared for you at Armstrong Station and Hope's End? The display split to show two additional tactical views. Each showed similar scenes, thousands of human warships emerging from camouflage, taking battle positions around their respective colonies. The ships themselves looked unlike anything in the Galactic Council's databases. They were sleek, angular, and covered in what appeared to be advanced stealth plating. Impossible, Zektar repeated. Your species has been in space for less than 200 years. You can't have built this many ships. You're absolutely right, Colonel Chen agreed. We couldn't have built this fleet in 200 years. That's why we've been building it for 300 years. A cold silence fell over the hegemony command deck. What are you talking about? Zektar demanded. First contact, Admiral. When your council scouts found Earth 90 years ago, you thought you were discovering a primitive species just beginning to explore space. You were wrong. Humanity had already been spreading through the galaxy for over 2 centuries. We'd been watching the council, studying your methods, learning your weaknesses. End quote. The tactical display zoomed out to show the larger region of space. Red dots began appearing throughout council territory, dozens of them, then hundreds. Each dot represented a hidden human presence that had been operating undetected for decades. Every time the council destroyed a species, we took notes, Colonel Chen continued. Every time you forced surrender through overwhelming force, we studied your tactics. We knew that eventually, you'd come for us. So we prepared. Captain Mordoon was frantically working his console, trying to verify the sensor readings. Admiral, long-range scans are confirming human presence throughout Council space. They have hidden bases, stealth ships, listening posts. How did our intelligence miss all of this? Because we wanted them to miss it, Colonel Chen answered, somehow hearing the question despite the communication link supposedly being one way. Your scouts found exactly what we wanted them to find, a young species with primitive technology and a small fleet. Meanwhile, the real Terran Federation was preparing for this day. Zektar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest: genuine fear. What do you want? What we want is for the Galactic Council to understand a new reality. The age of easy conquest is over. Humanity has been silent and patient while you destroyed species across the galaxy. We documented every atrocity, cataloged every crime, and prepared our response. The main display suddenly showed a massive structure materializing near the edge of the system. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it was powering up weapons that made the hegemony fleet's armaments look like toys. That's our newest battle station, the Times Retribution Asterisk, Colonel Chen announced. It's one of 12 we've built over the past 30 years. Each one is capable of destroying your entire fleet single-handedly. Admiral Zektar's legs gave out, and he collapsed into his command chair. 2,000 ships, the pride of the hegemony navy, suddenly seemed insignificant compared to what the humans had revealed. Admiral, Colonel Chen's voice had lost its pleasant tone. You now have exactly 15 minutes to begin your withdrawal from human space. If you do not comply, we will demonstrate why the Galactic Council should have left humanity alone. The communication ended, leaving the command deck in chaos. Officers were shouting reports, confirming the impossible reality that surrounded them. A species they'd planned to conquer in an afternoon had instead revealed a military force that dwarfed their own. Sir, the communications officer reported, we're receiving similar transmissions from fleets throughout Council space. Human forces are revealing themselves everywhere. They're demanding immediate withdrawal from over 300 systems. Zektar stared at the tactical display, showing the human forces surrounding his fleet. For the first time in his military career, he was completely outmatched. The question now wasn't whether to fight. It was whether the Council would even survive humanity's response to centuries of galactic tyranny. The countdown timer on the main display showed 14 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Whatever the humans had planned for their ruthless counterattack, Zektar was beginning to suspect it would indeed leave the Galactic Council speechless. Admiral Zektar's countdown timer reached 0, and nothing happened. For a moment, he dared to hope that the humans had been bluffing. Then, his sensor officer began screaming, "Admiral! Multiple hyperspace signatures throughout the system. Massive ones!" The tactical display exploded into activity as dozens of new contacts materialized around the hegemony fleet. These weren't the sleek warships they'd seen earlier. These were enormous vessels, each one the size of a city. Their black hulls seemed to absorb light itself, making them appear like holes in space. "Human dreadnoughts," whispered the intelligence officer. "I count 36 of them. Each one is larger than our flagship." But Admiral Zektar was staring at something else entirely. Throughout Council space, the display showed human fleets emerging from hyperspace near every major hegemony world. The red dots marking human presence weren't just listening posts. They were staging areas for the largest military operation in galactic history. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced, his voice shaking. The display showed a new face, an older human male with steel-gray hair and cold blue eyes. His uniform bore insignia that marked him as a high-ranking military commander, though no Council database had any record of his existence. "I am Admiral Marcus Kane, Supreme Commander of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said. His voice carried absolute authority. "Admiral Zektar, you have failed to comply with our withdrawal demand. The Terran Federation is now implementing Protocol 7. Protocol 7? Zektar managed to ask. "Complete military response to genocidal aggression," Admiral Kane replied. "For the past 90 years, the Galactic Council has systematically destroyed 43 species. Over 200 billion intelligent beings have died because the Council decided they were inconvenient. Today, that ends." The tactical display suddenly showed movement throughout the galaxy. Human fleets weren't just defending colonies, they were actively attacking Council installations. Military bases, supply depots, and command centers were being hit simultaneously across hundreds of systems. "This is impossible," Captain Mordoon protested. "Even if you have the ships, You can't coordinate attacks across the entire galaxy. The communication delays alone would make it impossible. Admiral Kane smiled, the same cold expression Colonel Chen had worn earlier. Captain, you're thinking like someone who relies on traditional faster-than-light communication. We solved that problem decades ago. On cue, every human ship in the New Geneva system began moving with perfect precision. Their formations shifted and adapted in real time, responding to threats and opportunities faster than any known command structure should allow. Quantum entanglement communication networks, Admiral Kane explained. Instantaneous coordination across any distance. While your species were arguing over territory, we were revolutionizing how wars are fought. Admiral Zektar watched in horror as his fleet's formation was systematically dismantled. The human ships moved like a single organism, anticipating his commander's orders before they could give them. Every time the hegemony forces tried to concentrate their firepower, the humans had already shifted to counter the move. Sir, the weapons officer reported. Should we open fire? Do it, Zektar commanded. All ships, full assault, show these primitives the power of the hegemony. The hegemony fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, particle weapons, and fusion missiles filled space with deadly light. It was a barrage that could have destroyed any known fleet in minutes. None of it touched the human ships. Impossible, Zektar breathed. Our sensors show direct hits. How are they still intact? The tactical officer was frantically checking his readings. Sir, the energy is being redirected somehow. The human ships aren't just armored. They're actually channeling our weapons fire into their own power systems. Admiral Kane appeared on the communication system again. Adaptive energy manipulation technology. Your weapons aren't just useless against us. They're actually making us stronger. Another gift from one of the species your council destroyed. The Velkari were energy beings who tried to share their knowledge with the galaxy. The council exterminated them for being too alien. We preserved their technology and improved it. The human dreadnoughts began returning fire, but their weapons were unlike anything in council databases. Instead of traditional energy beams or projectiles, they fired what appeared to be controlled spatial distortions. Where these weapons hit hegemony ships, the vessels simply ceased to exist. No explosions, no debris, just empty space where mighty warships had been moments before. Reality warping technology, Admiral Kane explained calmly, developed with help from the dimensional engineers of the Tertius cluster. Another species your council deemed too dangerous to live. We found them quite helpful. Captain Mordoon was backing away from his station in terror. They're not just using their own technology. They've preserved the knowledge of every species we've destroyed. They've been collecting our victims' scientific achievements for centuries. The battle, if it could even be called that, was turning into a demonstration of technological superiority that defied understanding. The hegemony's most advanced warships were being casually destroyed by weapons they couldn't even comprehend, wielded by a species they'd dismissed as primitive. Admiral, the communications officer called out, I'm receiving reports from fleets throughout Council space. It's the same everywhere. Human forces are completely overwhelming our military installations. The third battle group at Proxima Station. They're gone. Completely destroyed in under an hour. What about the fortress worlds? Zektar demanded. Surely our defensive installations can hold against them. The main display shifted to show the massive fortress complex at Hegemony Prime, the most heavily defended installation in Council space. 12 artificial moons surrounded the system's star, each one armed with enough firepower to destroy fleets. It was considered absolutely impregnable. As they watched, a single human ship emerged from hyperspace near the fortress complex. It was smaller than the dreadnoughts they'd seen, sleek and somehow organic-looking. Without any apparent weapons fire, the fortress moons simply turned off. Their shields failed, their weapons powered down, and their stations went dark. Technological plague, Admiral Kane announced. A gift from the hive mind of Andromeda Station. Your council decided they were too collective-minded to deserve existence. Their final act was to share their knowledge with us. How to create systems that can infiltrate and disable any technology based on standard galactic engineering principles. The fortress moons began breaking apart, not from weapons fire but from their own systems turning against them. Within minutes, the most powerful defensive installation in known space was reduced to drifting debris. "How long?" Zektar whispered. "How long what, Admiral? How long have you been planning this?" Admiral Kane was quiet for a moment. "The first human ship reached the galactic rim 312 years ago. Captain Elena Vasquez was exploring what your people call the Outer Dark when she discovered the ruins of the Architect homeworld. The Architects, the first species your council destroyed over 4,000 years ago. They'd left behind a message. The display showed what appeared to be an ancient recording. The being speaking was unlike any known species. Tall, crystalline, with movements that suggested intelligence beyond comprehension. They warned us," Admiral Kane continued. "The Architects had predicted that someday, a young species would discover their ruins and face the same choice they had: submit to the Council or prepare for war. They left behind their complete technological database and a simple message: make them pay for what they've done." Admiral Zektar felt his world crumbling. "You've been planning this since before first contact. Everything, the colonies, the primitive technology displays, even allowing yourselves to be discovered, it was all preparation for this moment. 3 centuries of planning, Admiral. 3 centuries of studying every species the Council destroyed, preserving their knowledge, and preparing for the day when we would have to choose between slavery and freedom. The Council made our choice easy." The tactical display now showed the scope of humanity's counterattack. Across the galaxy, Council forces were being systematically dismantled, not just defeated, completely overwhelmed by technology and tactics they couldn't even understand. Fortress worlds were falling, command centers were going dark, and entire fleets were vanishing from sensor contact. "Sir," the sensor officer called out. "Long-range scanners show Council forces attempting to retreat to the core worlds. But there are human ships already in position to intercept them. They're not letting anyone escape." Admiral Kane's expression grew even colder. "There will be no retreat, Admiral Zektar. The Council has spent millennia perfecting the art of genocide. Today, you learn what it feels like to be on the receiving end." The human dreadnoughts around the hegemony fleet began powering up weapons of impossible size. Energy readings showed power levels that should have been impossible for ships of any size to generate. "However," Admiral Kane continued, "the Terran Federation is not the Galactic Council. We don't believe in extermination for its own sake. Any Council personnel who surrender immediately will be taken prisoner and transported to designated detention facilities. They will be treated according to the standards of civilized warfare. Standards the Council never bothered to learn." Captain Mordun looked at Admiral Zektar with desperate hope. "Sir, perhaps we should consider surrender. This battle is impossible to win." But Admiral Zektar was no longer looking at the tactical display. He was staring at something far more terrifying. Reports from throughout Council space showing the true scope of humanity's operation. This wasn't just a counterattack. It was the complete dissolution of galactic civilization as they knew it. "Admiral Kane," he said finally, "what do you intend to do with the Council itself?" The human admiral's smile became truly frightening. "That, Admiral Zektar, depends entirely on whether they're smart enough to surrender before we finish demonstrating why the galaxy's new rulers wear human faces." The countdown timer on Zektar's display had been replaced with a new message: "Hegemony fleet, surrender, or be destroyed. You have 10 minutes to decide." But even as his own fleet faced annihilation, Admiral Zektar realized that this was just the beginning. Humanity hadn't just prepared to defend themselves, they'd prepared to remake the entire galaxy in their image. And from what he'd seen of their capabilities, nothing was going to stop them. Supreme Chancellor Vex Theron had ruled the Galactic Council for over 800 years. In all that time, no species had ever dared challenge Council authority directly. The emergency session hall buzzed with panic as representatives from across the galaxy reported the same impossible news. Humanity was winning. Order. Vex Theron's massive form dominated the central platform, his biomechanical enhancements amplifying his voice to fill the enormous chamber. "I will have order in this council." The reptilian delegate from the hegemony spoke first, his voice cracking with fear. "Supreme Chancellor, we've lost contact with 70% of our fleets. The humans aren't just defeating us, they're making us disappear." Admiral Zektar's final transmission spoke of weapons that erase ships from existence. "Impossible," growled the Korthak War Master. "No species developed such technology in mere centuries. Their first space-worthy vessels were detected less than 300 years ago." Chancellor Vex Theron was studying the massive holographic display that dominated the chamber's center. Red zones marked areas under human control, and those zones were expanding faster than the display could update. What had been isolated attacks 6 hours ago was now a coordinated conquest of half the galaxy. "Intelligence Coordinator," the Chancellor commanded, "explain how an entire species managed to hide military capabilities of this magnitude." Intelligence Coordinator Zelnith, whose species specialized in information gathering, stepped forward with obvious reluctance. "Supreme Chancellor, we have discovered evidence of systematic deception spanning 3 centuries. The humans we believed we were monitoring were actors." The chamber erupted in outraged clicks, roars, and other expressions of alien disbelief. "Actors?" demanded the hegemony delegate. "Yes, the human colonies we observed, the primitive ships we catalogued, even the personalities we studied during first contact. All carefully constructed performances designed to make us underestimate their true capabilities." The War Master's claws scraped against his speaking platform. "You're telling this council that an entire species has been pretending to be primitive for 3 centuries? Not the entire species," Zelnith corrected. "According to our latest intelligence, the humans we observed represented less than 1% of their actual population. The remaining 99% has been living in hidden installations throughout the galaxy, building fleets and developing technologies we didn't know were possible." Chancellor Vex Theron felt something he hadn't experienced in 8 centuries of rule: genuine fear. "What are their numbers?" Conservative estimates suggest over 2 trillion humans currently exist across the galaxy. They have established permanent installations in over 8,000 star systems, most of which we never detected. Their actual military fleet numbers, somewhere between 50 and 70,000 warships. The silence that followed was absolute. The Galactic Council, which had ruled through superior numbers and advanced technology for millennia, had just learned they were outnumbered by a species they'd planned to conquer in an afternoon. "Sir," an aide whispered to the Chancellor, "we're receiving a transmission addressed to the full Council." "The source appears to be Earth. Put it through," Vex Theron commanded. The holographic display shifted to show a simple room with wooden furniture and what appeared to be natural lighting. Behind a plain desk sat an elderly human woman with gray hair and kind eyes. She could have been anyone's grandmother, but the power she radiated was unmistakable. "I am President Elena Vasquez of the Terran Federation," she said in a calm, pleasant voice. "Great-great-granddaughter of Captain Elena Vasquez, who first discovered the Architect ruins 3 centuries ago. I'm speaking to inform the Galactic Council that your era of dominance has ended." Chancellor Vex Theron stepped forward. "President Vasquez, I am Supreme Chancellor Vex Theron. If you wish to negotiate terms of surrender, the Council is prepared to discuss reasonable conditions for your species' integration into our civilization." The human woman smiled, the same unsettling expression they'd been seeing from humans all day. "Chancellor, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We're not here to surrender. We're here to inform you that the Galactic Council is disbanded, effective immediately." The chamber exploded in outrage. Representatives from dozens of species began shouting demands and threats in their native languages. President Vasquez waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. "For over 4,000 years, this council has operated under the principle that might makes right. You've destroyed species for being too different, too advanced, or simply too inconvenient. You've turned genocide into government policy and convinced yourselves it was civilization." The display showed a new image, a vast memorial wall covered in names and symbols representing extinct species. "These are the 43 civilizations your council has eliminated. 217 billion individual beings, each with their own hopes, dreams, and potential contributions to galactic society. All dead because you decided they weren't worth keeping alive. Those species were dangerous, protested the War Master. They threatened galactic stability. No, President Vasquez replied firmly. They threatened your control. There's a difference. The display shifted to show footage of human fleets throughout the galaxy, but these weren't battle scenes. They showed human ships approaching Council facilities with white flags, broadcasting surrender demands and offering prisoner exchanges. As we speak, the Terran Federation is offering every member species of the Galactic Council a choice. Surrender peacefully and participate in the formation of a new galactic government based on cooperation rather than domination, or continue fighting and be removed from power by force. Intelligence Coordinator Zelnith stepped forward. President Vasquez, even if you possess superior military technology, governing the galaxy requires more than weapons. The Council maintains order among thousands of species across millions of worlds. You maintain fear, President Vasquez corrected. And you're right that governing requires more than weapons. That's why the Terran Federation has spent the past century preparing for this day, by developing actual solutions to galactic governance. The display showed something that made the entire chamber fall silent. A massive space station unlike anything they'd ever seen. It was enormous, easily the size of a small planet, and it was surrounded by hundreds of smaller stations connected by energy bridges. New Geneva Station, President Vasquez explained. The first of 12 such installations we've constructed throughout the galaxy. Each one is designed to serve as a regional governmental center for free cooperation between species. No rulers, no subjugation, no genocide. Just civilized beings working together for mutual benefit. Impossible, whispered the Chancellor. Different species can't cooperate on that scale. Their biologies, their thought patterns, their basic needs are incompatible. You're thinking like a conqueror, President Vasquez replied. We've been thinking like diplomats, scientists, and teachers. Did you know that the Velkari energy beings actually developed perfect translation technology before you destroyed them? Or that the hive mind of Andromeda Station had solved resource distribution on a galactic scale? The dimensional engineers had created technology that could customize environments for any species' needs. The display showed representatives from dozens of species, but not the species that currently served on the Galactic Council. These were beings no council member had ever seen. You see, Chancellor, you made one crucial mistake in your 4,000 years of rule. You assumed that when you destroyed a species, you killed everyone. You didn't. There were always survivors. Beings who escaped, hid, or were rescued by others. For 3 centuries, the Terran Federation has been finding these survivors and giving them new homes. The War Master was backing away from his platform. You've been harboring criminals and dissidents. Species the Council rightfully eliminated for the greater good. We've been preserving the galaxy's true heritage, President Vasquez corrected. And now these extinct species are helping us build something better than your empire of fear. Chancellor Vex Theron was studying the tactical display showing human forces throughout the galaxy. What he saw there was even more terrifying than their military capabilities. The humans weren't just conquering Council territories. They were systematically liberating oppressed populations, freeing slave species, and dismantling the entire infrastructure of Council rule. What do you want? He asked finally. We want you to step down, President Vasquez said simply. All of you. The Galactic Council as an institution is dissolved. Your fleets are defeated. Your installations are captured. And your authority is revoked. Any species that wishes to participate in the new Galactic Federation is welcome. But the days of rule through intimidation are over. And if we refuse? President Vasquez's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. Then you'll discover what 43 extinct species learned. That there are worse fates than surrender. The chamber was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Every representative was staring at the human woman who had just casually announced the end of galactic civilization as they knew it. Chancellor, she continued, you have 1 hour to announce the Council's formal surrender and begin transition procedures. After that, the Terran Federation will assume direct control of all Council territories and begin trials for crimes against galactic civilization. Trials? The hegemony delegate squeaked. 4,000 years of genocide doesn't go unanswered, President Vasquez replied. Every member of this council, every military leader, every official who participated in the destruction of innocent species will face justice. The survivors you thought you'd eliminated are very eager to testify about what you did to their worlds. The transmission showed a new image. A massive courtroom filled with beings from dozens of species. The survivors of worlds the Council had thought completely destroyed. They were alive, they remembered everything, and they were demanding justice. 1 hour, Chancellor, President Vasquez repeated. Choose wisely. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in absolute silence. For several minutes, no one spoke. No one moved. No one even seemed to breathe. Finally, Intelligence Coordinator Zelnith spoke in a whisper. Supreme Chancellor, our sensor networks are reporting human ships taking control of the last Council strongholds. The fortress at Alpha Centauri just surrendered without firing a shot. The defense platforms at Rigel went offline voluntarily. It's over. Chancellor Vex Theron looked around the chamber at representatives who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Species that had conquered worlds, enslaved populations, and eliminated entire civilizations without a second thought. Now they sat in stunned silence, completely outmaneuvered by a species they'd planned to exterminate in a single day. How? He whispered. How did they do this to us? The answer came from the chamber's communication system. Not an official channel, but a simple audio transmission that somehow reached every being in the room. You taught us, said a voice that sounded like Admiral Kane. Every species you destroyed, every world you conquered, every atrocity you committed. You taught us exactly what we needed to stop. We just learned the lessons better than you expected. Chancellor Vex Theron slumped in his ceremonial throne, the weight of 8 centuries of rule suddenly crushing down on him. Around the chamber, other representatives were beginning to understand the full scope of what had happened. They hadn't just been defeated in battle. They'd been outthought, outplanned, and completely outclassed by a species they'd never taken seriously. The great irony wasn't lost on any of them. The Galactic Council, which had ruled through fear and superior firepower for 4,000 years, had been brought down by the very qualities they despised. Patience, cooperation, and the determination to preserve life rather than destroy it. In the end, humanity's counterattack had indeed left the Galactic Council speechless, not because they lacked words to describe their defeat, but because they finally understood that their era of dominance had been built on foundations so rotten that a single species, working with the survivors of their victims, had been able to bring down 4 millennia of galactic rule in less than a day. The age of the Galactic Council was over. The age of the Terran Federation had begun.